Welcome to Breakdown, where we'll be breaking down your favorite pieces of media from its characters to its story. Today we'll be dissecting the anime Dr. Stone in its anime entirety, as well as dabble a bit in the manga as needed. Let's start by setting up the show, and then we can break down the characters. And today's breakdown comes with a Dr. Stone themed character quiz that you should take in a moment. Let us begin. Get excited. It's been a while since I watched the show, so let's get started by doing just that. Alright, he's okay. Hey, yo, he did! Did I mention spoiler warning? Never mind. He's good. Big explosion, cute girl, the village, there goes my favorite character. Alright, that should do it. Dr. Stone is about the modern day era being blasted with the supernatural light, turning all of humanity into stone. Over 1,000 years, Senku, a high school student science prodigy with a wicked hairstyle, begins a mission to restore the stone world back into the modern tech age, through science as well as discover how this all happened to begin with. Through the awesome power of science, he revives allies and antagonist Tsukasa, nicknamed as the strongest high school primate, strong enough to fight off anyone. He also has a certain disdain towards greedy adults and has no intention of letting Senku live to restore the world. With very little options, Senku enlists the aid of a village of genuine primates who are oblivious to science. Using tech and weapons, they combat the ever-growing army of Tsukasa. Not too shabby of a synopsis if I do say so myself. Alright, time for some 3 a.m. coffee so we can get started with the quiz. What, you think I made it already? Nah, man, that's far too responsible for me. Don't worry, I'll make it right now with you. Let's figure out the characters first. We're looking for characters that are relevant and distinct from each other. Let's start with popularity polls that most manga-inspired anime have. And here we are. Yes! Gen Asagiri, the mentalist. He's my favorite. Senku Ishigami, the scientist, the protagonist, so that makes sense. Risui Nanami? The captain. Very distinct. Pass on the hearing guy. He blends into other characters too much. Tsukasa, definitely. The antagonist. Gohaku the lioness, Chrome the sorcerer, Suika the kid detective, Kyogo second in command, Ginro and Kinro the bodyguards of Ishigami village, and that should do it. 11 options is a fine amount. Next up, you propose a bunch of questions with answers and separate the quiz takers into distinct categories. Questions that separate people by stuff like extroversion traits, valued skills, self-perceived behavior. Then you answer each question as if you are in a similar situation, and voila! Personality quiz. Since we got that done, you should give that personality test a try and come on back. And then we'll see if we got you right. I'm 1,000,000,000% sure we will. After all, we made it together just now, you and me, so we're equally responsible. The quiz will be in the description and top pinned comment below. Let's switch gears and get started with the main man himself, Senku Ishigami, the scientist. Get excited.
This brainiac of a guy is clearly an introvert who gets drained attempting to socialize and simply refuses to enjoy parties for the sake of merriment. As seen when he becomes the village chief and ditching the celebration in lieu of science ingredients. Another core part of our protagonist, naturally our quiz can't ascertain one's IQ score, but it can figure out if you perceive yourself as intelligent, or another realm of similar cognition. We also hardly see Senku lie. Of course we see instances with him when he does, or when he tries to be tricky, but often he folds depending on his honest straightforwardness to gain the trust of allies. Another fun tidbit would be how unlucky he is in the show. From getting attacked by wild beasts early on in the season, causing him to unpetrify the antagonist, all the way to the phone incident in Stone Wars. Even Gen brings it up in the show.
You know, I've always noticed something. Your luck of the draw ridiculously sucks, doesn't it?
Of course you can't mention Senku without mentioning his eccentricities that bubble up from his unbridled passion for science. My diagnosis? So if you got Senku, then you're probably a quiet guy who prefers to toil away at whatever pet project or hobby you're currently occupied with. You're also more honest often than not, and prefer not to leave things to chance because you just might not be that lucky. I bet you have a good moral compass on you too. Lastly, God forbid someone talks to you about your favorite topics. I'm sure you'll explode with excitement talking their ear off, talking about everything you know. So wild and yet so timid. Next up will be the healthy rival for you. Two sides of the same coin, Asagiri Gen. Gen is the show's tailcoat, mentalist, magician, and more importantly, my favorite character. Gen proves to be a dynamic guy with a persona that keeps people at arm's length until he desires otherwise. First impressions lead us, the audience, to think Gen is a selfish, greedy guy who will betray anyone to be on the winning team. The mentalist says this himself. However, early on, he had the opportunity to sell out Senku and be on the winning team. But he chose otherwise, then proved to be the deciding factor for Team Senku's many victories. With that aside, he openly flirts and is happy to celebrate occasions like a true extrovert. Though alcohol is not to his liking, he does have a soft spot for soda, a sweet narcotic that it's known as an upper for the brain. As a mentalist, it makes sense he'd prefer something that'll keep him sharp instead of down like most liquors or other drinks. He is shown to be an intellectual equivalent to Senku, just not in the same way. Skills like lying, manipulation, stage magic, sleight of hand, linguistics, master of tactics, and nerves of steel. Even in the face of death, a young man who is a bit more empathetic, he doesn't like hurting people, preferring to do the right thing more often than not. We see this during Stone Wars Episode 2, when he physically stops Magma from destroying the statues of potential future enemies. This would have been very intelligent and a very great advantage for them, but he chose not to instead.
Slow down, though.
Diagnosis? So if you've got Gen, then you're an extrovert who really might be a social butterfly. You're cautious in most things you do, but not so much that it's debilitating, but instead helpful for you. You're a wonderful and flexible asset for most occasions, but you're still an empath who feels for others despite your tricky nature.
Okay. Sounds like it's time for this mentalist to go to work.
With that, we move on to the show's antagonist, the strongest primate, Tsukasa. Tsukasa is an interesting case, and simpler since he is used early on as an imposing force to Senku. Proven to be a rather intelligent and incredible tactician, comparable to even Senku. From flashbacks and a statement he shares early on, we see him without any friends, clearly an introvert. Despite this, he oozes a charisma that makes others follow him. With these natural traits out of the way, we can talk about the elephant in the village. Multiple counts of murder. Murder against Senku, and the creation of an extremist group to go against Team Science. He does this all to eventually find and save his sister, whom he seems to live for. His hatred of science stems from a desire to prevent the world from being the hostile place it once was. A place where adults seem to take and take, leaving nothing for the kids. A sad truth that's even relevant today. He wants a world where his sister can live. Pair this with his deep appreciation for nature. And Tsukasa really didn't have much of a choice but to challenge Senku. Diagnosis? So if you've got Tsukasa, then you're a sharp young man. Introverted tendencies, fiercely loyal, caring for others, strong-willed with an emotional connection to nature, and... Wow, that was it actually. Wow, Tsukasa's a little one-dimensional, and we do flesh him out later on in the manga, but don't worry about it. And now, time for the brawn to Senku's brain. Taiju, the simple one. Taiju is indeed what Senku says, a simple one. A loud, earnest guy who I would bet my chips on being an extrovert, who gets along just fine with most folks. A natural-born athlete with a wicked stamina and strength. Despite the brawny body, he is a gentle pacifist or a gentle giant. This was made clear early on in the season when he refused to fight Tsukasa and was willing to simply take a beating. His resolve for not hurting others is pushed even further when he thought his dear friend Senku was killed in front of him. Instead of going into a rage like Tsukasa thought, he kept a surprising tactful mind and used signs to evade his enemy. Despite this great moment, he mainly relies on Senku for what he calls the brainy stuff. This shows off 1, he is familiar and open about his limitations, and 2, he puts his trust into others wholeheartedly. We see this on multiple occasions, where he puts his trust into Senku, like when Senku said Tsukasa was a bad guy, and he went along with it, no explanation needed. Plus in the Stone Wars, when Senku finally got in contact with him, they immediately got to work, surprising even the village Senku's been working with. My diagnosis? Put it all together and what do you get? An extroverted, loud guy who probably solves most problems with brute force and straightforward approaches. Someone who prefers a calm and peaceful life, and as well as has a good eye for people they can trust. You know what you're good at and what you're not. Your bullheadedness makes people underestimate you, giving you opportunities to surprise the world. Ooh, I actually kind of like that. And here I thought writing a personality diagnosis for him would be kind of hard and boring. Next up, Chrome, the way bad sorcerer of Ishigami Village. At first glance, the diet soda version of Senku, but much more under the surface. The primary traits of Chrome really shine with just a little bit of polishing. Growing up as a solitary boy outside of his own village, he became a self-made explorer, diving into caves and collecting anything he could get his grubby little hands on. Without modern-day knowledge, he trailed and aired his way into science, and impressively was one of the smartest non-petrified humans around. Even when they get specialists from the modern day, he's no joke able to keep up with them in terms of science. All this to say, he is a self-motivated, passion-filled young scientist. Despite his loudmouth nature, he does seem to know when to calm down, often throwing others for a loop. This shows off his resourceful nature, taking advantage of being underestimated. We see this trait in a physical sense by him collecting rocks as a kid and scavenging equipment even in the heat of battle, aiding Senku and overall winning him the final battle in Stone Wars. To complete the trifecta of his personality would be his kindness. Despite having a devious nature shared between him and Senku, he's even more earnest than our protagonist. And, Gen, of course. Gen is very slimy and tricky, and I love him for it, it's okay. This shows Chrome has the capacity to be underhanded, but it's not his go-to like other characters. He shows off his pinnacle of selflessness during the chief's bout, when he didn't care for marrying his crush, only wanting to see her get better with the medicine he made and risked his life for. All this to say, he is selfish, he is selfless and passionate. My diagnosis? I can see it now. Someone who's a little awkward socially, but not exactly a shut-in. So you're probably an ambivert, you know, both an introvert and an extrovert. Hopefully you have the same self-determination, or at least a passion for something in your life. You're the kind of guy or gal who prefers to teach yourself, or at least learn through a more practical hands-on approach. You're kind and considerate of others, probably always trying to make others comfortable around you. So studious and kind, I'm sure your mama's proud. Aw, next up is Kid Detective Sukia. Suika? I'll be keeping this one rather short. As someone who's read the entire manga, we learn very much about her. But at the moment, she's not as fleshed out as she is in the manga. When we first meet the young girl, I see an awkward, timid girl who's quick to trust our main trio and really happy to belong to a cause. But she seems to lack the mental strength because she's a child, but she makes up for it with her bravery and stealth. Despite being easily frightened, she's never seen to be frozen in fear, opting to complete the mission above all else. I don't think anyone understands what I'm saying. This is literally a child with a melon on her head with the soldier mentality, and I adore it. She's also called a detective by Senku, our protagonist, for her time spying on the others for Team Science. Later on in the series, not shown yet, we double down on her bravery and expand in other ways, but that's mainly it. Bravery, stealth, and intense loyalty. Towards the end of her character arc in the manga, we get a tiny Chrome basically, if we're being honest. My diagnosis? If you got Suika, then you're probably still a youngster finding your way through life still. This is evident in the first question of the quiz, by the way. Probably an awkward wallflower who's consistently trying to do better and push yourself. That's a good thing. Come back to the quiz when you're more sure of who you are, but I'm sure you'll probably end up with either her again or you end up with Chrome. Which is fine, which is great. Congratulations. Next up is Risui, the greedy captain. Aha! Risui! The greedy captain is a playboy, millionaire, genius sailor. Huh? Oh, you want more? I guess we could delve into his method of ascertaining his experience and wealth. After all, his rich mommy and daddy did not toss him into classes. One day as a kid in the modern day, he had the thought of wanting to see the world. This made him want to captain a ship. The glory in this is his greed. That was his motivating factor in his development, becoming a prodigy in his field in nearly every aspect. He could tell you the temperature down to the very degree just by feeling, making weather predictions on feel alone, and not only sail a boat, this motivation was through greed and was outwardly expressed so. He didn't want to make the world a better place or teach. He wanted to be a sailor and become the best because that's what he wanted. This venture even bore financial fruit, making him more self-made than others like him. Coming from wealth homes, I mean. He created his own wealth with his own skills. Another side to his otherwise one-dimensional character is his approach to others, openly saying every woman is beautiful. Even kids and old ladies, finding and respecting the value in others. His appraisal also extends to people he deems he can trust. If Ryusui deems you trustworthy, then his faith for you is concrete. It's absolute. Although you don't know of his ventures in the manga, let's just say he's the guy that will lay his life on the line for you while having no intentions of expiring. My diagnosis? Well, you've got to be a greedy guy for starters, motivated by others you like, and not held back by your morals. Everything in your mind is in tune for your desires. Being very sure of yourself is a must. You know exactly who and what you are. An extrovert without a doubt, and wouldn't be surprised if you're the loud type. Lastly would be your impressive instincts. Your gut feelings have saved you on more than one occasion, I'm sure. This probably makes you a very good judge of character in others, or at least able to judge situations before your friends. Next up is Kyogo. Kyogo is a talented young student with a spear in the modern day world. A forgotten practice that suddenly had tremendous value in the Stone Age. Revived by Tsukasa to aid him as his number 2 and wage war on the kingdom of science. He was a harsh leader. He's a victim of logic above all else, often quoting a proper way of doing things. By this, he means the logical way of doing things. This is just a personal mantra he believes in and is impressed when people other than him are proper. With this in mind, he shows a level of disassociation throughout the show until, spoilers, until his ultimate betrayal on Tsukasa, meaning a potential for seeing things in a third person or like a game.
For a fight. Sending them against Senku might make for a good opening gambit after.
Though he's a more evil protagonist in the story, his personality does not translate as such. It's not like he was a wanted murderer pre-Stone era. He was an award-winning athlete and quite possibly a scholar as well. What does this mean for the ones who got the bad guy in the personality assessment? Diagnosis? It means you're logical. Not necessarily smart, but people might say you are anyways. Your intelligence comes from a place of practicality or a proper way of doing things. Or you're just particular about the things you enjoy. Even though you might be good with people, I might want to place my chips on you being an introvert. The kind of guy or gal who toils away at whatever you like alone. Gohaku, the lioness of the kingdom of science. Personality-wise, she has a lot of positives and only a few downsides that could be even admired by others. For starters, she has an incredible level of compassion for her family and those she deems worthy. We note this with her collecting spearing water on the daily for her sick sister. Also to mention, she grew up in the post-stone era, so she's basically a cave woman. As one of the head combatants in the group, she has sharp instincts and an amazing perception. Nothing escapes her 40-20 vision and her intuition. Something notable was her ability to notice Gen the Mentalist's nature when others couldn't. She also has an against the grain lifestyle, choosing to be a fighter for her village despite being a woman and being disconnected from her femininity. This is not a choice though. Despite the boorish nature, she still sees herself as a woman with all that comes with it. This spells out a lot for her personality, like how she prioritizes duty over her own well-being. Another fun fact is her thoughts on taking one's life. She's completely against it, but is capable of doing so if she had to or was ordered to. Similar to the time she had Gen at spear point and was willing to take his life, but not unless ordered by Senku. This mindset shows her strong belief, but also shows her willingness to break or bend those beliefs if it came down to it. She said she wanted to share the responsibility of taking a life, which is why she waited for an order that never came. My diagnosis? This means you're kind and compassionate for your friends and family, very perceptive, and have a wise intuition that hardly ever leaves you astray. You also live your life to the beat of your own drum, not caring at all what other people think. Lastly, your moral compass is a good one, and keeps you and your beliefs aligned. Next up are the bodyguards. The lesser of the two guard brothers of Ishigami Village, Ginro, lived as a villager in the world of stone all his life, being naive to technology. Just like Gohaku, known for being weaker, smaller, and less mature than his brother, the second guard, he lacks in many areas. Ginro makes up for this by being clever, crafty, and willing to quote unquote, cheat. But just like Senku once said, living in the stone world, if you're not cheating, you ain't trying. One of the few positive traits is his willingness to accept his weakness. His brother needed to fight in the ceremony early on in the series and had what the villagers called the fuzzy eye sickness. Poor eyesight. This would have been an easy fix for Senku and the science team, but due to his older brother's pride, he couldn't admit it and forbade Ginro from allowing anyone to know this. And this ultimately knocked Ginro out of the fighting competition. This means Ginro is at the very least clever, or able to have more moments of clarity than others. Also, he is young, meaning he hasn't had time to figure himself out and expand on his personality. After all, you won't find mature babies or thumb-sucking adults. So don't feel bad if you end up with Ginro. He's still young. The blonde spearman also won't hesitate to take advantage in a confrontation and seems to be above honor. If you're into Harry Potter, then you'll probably lump him in with the sneaky Slytherins. I'm Slytherin, so it's okay, it's cool. Lastly, Ginro shows moments of cowardness. This is evident during the sulfuric acid episode when Team Science assigned him as the bodyguard for this super dangerous expedition for a dangerous chemical. We see a slight hero complex as he is flattered for being trusted as the bodyguard. But this fades after a terrifying experience. With the science team going back without him, he is ashamed. But he is tucked into going back and ends up saving the life of Chrome. This shows a great potential for the young Ginro, who's still figuring himself out. I mean, he's not even 18. Diagnosis? You're a young, selfish brat. Nah, I'm kidding. Well, maybe. You're competitive and perhaps a decent problem solver. You cover up your shortcomings by acknowledging them and moving on. In this game of life, you like to be prepared for anything and set yourself up for success. You might be a tad selfish, but that's alright. You're still loyal to your friends and family and you'll never leave anyone behind. Kinro, the other brother of Ginro, and the main guard of Ishigami Village. The tall young man grew up in the stone world much like many other characters, so he lived a simple life in the fishing village. He's a straight-laced and honorable stoic kind of guy, much like you expect from a guard. Much unlike his brother. He's strong and relies on his own strength and discipline for everything. Kinro absolutely despises laziness and cheating. His adherence to this code was so absolute, he was agitated by the Kingdom of Science tilting the odds in their favor at the very important Chiefs competition by merely joining. This shows that cheating or being dishonorable is simply not in his nature, even if it is for a good cause. We also see early on that he could be a bit dim. Simple manipulation tricks got him, and problem solving wasn't really his forte. But his unrivaled discipline started coming through the longer he was exposed to the science team. He even picked up arithmetic and writing faster than Ginro, someone who relied on his wits more often than him. Lastly, I want to talk about his sense of duty. Much like the watermelon girl, Sukia, he has an intense loyalty to those he cares about and to his duty above all else. We see this when Kyogo traps him in the bridge and has him hanging off of it. He yells to his brother to fulfill his duty, and cut the bridge, effectively killing him, sacrificing himself. When Ginro, his brother, starts cutting the bridge, he feels a sense of pride and a job well done. That was actually kind of badass, but since he's not a main character, we don't talk about it too often. My diagnosis? You're a stern, stoic guy or gal. The moment you get your hands on something, you run with it, able to devote yourself to things fully. Perhaps you're shockingly well-disciplined and dedicated to things or a cause. Your beliefs are unshakable and you can't be swayed into doing something you don't want to do. You might not be able to take to new ideas fast, but though you might bend and change, like the mighty willow, you don't break. And that's it! We're done! God, I love Dr. Stone, and with a new season on the horizon very soon. Let me see the date. It says early April, so I'm like April 6th, I think. Hopefully I get this video out before then. Oh, we should do an appreciation video for the show to celebrate. Let me know if that's something that interests you. And I hope that gets you excited. Feels nice to hit the new year off running, even though it's April. It's been a pleasure entertaining y'all today. I hope y'all have a good day. El Sai Kanguro.